everybody, it's Christina from Redefine Creative, and I am back with another episode of Stencil Play. And this is using our 12 by 12 Stencil of the Month Club stencils. And so I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock, and I'm using some mint tape to kind of tape that paper down to my desk. And I know that I want to use this stencil in a few kind of different ways. So I'm putting mint tape on the paper first and then the stencil so that I can remove just the stencil layer and move it around. So I'm going to start with this Catherine Pooler ink, and I'm using kind of just the star patterns in the middle of this particular stencil. So our April stencil of the month was this quilted background, and there's so many different ways to use it, which is part of why I really like this one. So I'm only using the little star sections. So I'm going to have 5 sections that are colored in, and I'm trying to keep with the same pattern. So it's kind of like the 4 center areas and then the 4 almost like leaves off the sides, and it connects my 5 sections. And then I'm going to go ahead and just spray it with water, and that's going to give it this kind of like water droplet sort of look. So then I'm going to go ahead and peel off that stencil and clean it up a little bit. And then I am going to bring it back and turn it. So instead of using it the exact same way, I'm going to turn it so that the center matches up, but I can put another color over the top. So I'm going to have to do this one in sections, and I'm going to use this silver metallic ink. So I'm going to use the same exact, like, almost like a little flower pattern that I had before, but because it's turned, the colors are going to kind of overlap in a really cool way. So I'm going to end up having the kind of pointy sides of the flowers there, and the center will be overlapping. And as I move the stencil around, it'll be a little bit easier to see. So it's creating kind of a double image, but it looks really neat to have those two things kind of layered up together. And we're going to end up doing a 3rd layer, and then later in the video I even come back and do a little 4th kind of layer detail. So as long as you match up that center point, even though we turned the stencil the other direction, you're going to keep those nice crisp white lines, and then our silver metallic is going to sit over the top of that turquoise. And so I think this would be really gorgeous to do like for winter or even for a Christmas layout. I'm going to use this one for a trip to Washington, D.C., which I think worked perfectly as well. But depending on what color combination and what metallics you used, you could get totally different looks. All right, so now I have my stencil back to the original orientation. So we started with this, inked through it in the like turquoise color. Then we turned the stencil and inked through it with metallic silver. And then I used some dilution spray to spray through the stencil. And so all 3 of those kind of layers that we created are all going to interact with each other to give us this really unique look. So then I went ahead and let it dry and trim down the edges. And then I'm taking my scissors and I'm going to go ahead and distress that just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it on some black cardstock. And so you can see my 2 pictures from the Lincoln Memorial that I'm going to use. There's a very bold black background because these were taken at night. And we kind of have that turquoise look to the lights on the building. So I thought this turquoise would be perfect in the background. And then we're going to play with some silver. So because these are kind of like historical travel pictures, that kind of thing, I'm not necessarily going to have a ton of embellishing on this layout. So that to me is a perfect spot to try this mixed media, to play with the stencil, all that kind of thing, because it creates a really impactful look on the background. And I really love how the stencil work came out. So if you are part of the Stencil of the Month Club, I totally want to encourage you to try using your stencil this way. So first step, ink blending, then turn your stencil, add a metallic ink, and then turn your stencil back and add a spray. So those are the first 3 steps. We're going to add some extra at the end to really pull it all together. So make sure to watch for that step too. All right, so I have 2 pictures that I want to include on this layout, and I trimmed them down so really the Lincoln Memorial is kind of all you see. Like I didn't need all of that black background. And then I just matted them on white cardstock to kind of help them stand out. And that black background is really going to match up with my black cardstock kind of border. And then I'm going to use some of this really fun netting to just create some layers. So I have a piece that's going to go kind of behind the 2 photos, and then I just sort of keep tucking it in. And this is a really fun way to add texture. It comes on a big roll, kind of like tulle. So it's a fun, I don't know, something different to add some matting, I guess you could say, behind my photos. So adding in some layering. All right, so I know I want these 2 photos kind of lined up off center on the left, and I don't want to cover up all of my stencil work, obviously, which kind of works better if you have your 2 pictures off to one side or the other. And I love that the stenciling, like depending on how much pressure you put, you got different colors. So like my colors at the bottom are a little bit like darker turquoise than the ones at the top, and I kind of like how different that looks. So then I'm going to go ahead and use these puffy foam thickers that are silver glitter to kind of match my silver detail in the background. And so I'm going to spell out the word walking, and then I'm going to switch to a mini black sticker font, and I believe these are from Fancy Pants. And I'm going to put in the steps for the second line. So I'm making a nice long title, and I wanted to make sure I got this on there before I thought about embellishments, because I knew that I wanted a longer title. So that's kind of one of my tips to you. If you want to include a longer title, sometimes it helps to get that title on the layout before you do a lot of embellishing, because what I tend to find out is if I leave my title till last, then I'm trying to like squeeze it in somewhere. So I don't know if you guys ever have that problem. Leave me a comment. Tell me if you've ever had that, because I hope it's not just me. So if I know I want to use a long title, I do tend to kind of push it up a little bit earlier in my process to help make sure I have room. So it's going to say walking in the steps of history. And these are just pictures from when I took my son to Washington, D.C. He'd never been there before I went, just Parker and I. So these are just some pictures. We did like a night monument tour. So we did this thing where we got to go at night to our very first night there to all the monuments, kind of hear the history, do a little exploring, that kind of thing. And it was perfect because he had never been there before. So it was a really good like overview to start the trip. And he knew exactly then like where he wanted to go back to, what he wanted to see more of in the daylight, all that kind of thing. So I added a few little stars with my silver glitter, and then I added a couple of enamel dots. So I have some kind of turquoise green and some silver glitter to kind of match everything else that's going on. And then I'm also going to pull in a couple of bigger black enamel dots just to have a little bit more of that black element carried across the page. And that's where I'm going to go ahead and kind of grab for some embellishing. So I have this big bin of like leftovers that sits on my desk. If you've been around here for a while, you know all about my crazy bins. So I had a few things. I'm just going to pull out some phrase stickers. I'm going to look for a few kind of like travel related die cuts. Nothing too fancy. I didn't have like a specific collection in mind. And when I don't have a specific collection, that tends to be when I go specifically to my crazy bins or these leftover areas. And I end up always finding something that works, which is kind of amazing, you know, because everything that was in that went in there is one of those things that you're like, I don't know how I'm going to use this. And it works out. All right, so we have this adventure word that's going to go down at the bottom. I have a little like wood grain tab that I put up at the top. And then there's a little tag that says you and I down at the bottom. And then I had a few of these little postage stamp type of things from Vicky Booten. And it's bringing in a little bit of this different mustard color, but I kind of like it because we only really had the turquoise and then the black and silver. So I kind of liked having that little pop of a different color in there. And you're going to see that I continue with that. So once I've committed and decided I'm going to have a little pop of that color, then I feel like I need to actually like make it look like I did that on purpose. So I'm using some of these phrase stickers that just kind of go along with the feel of the trip. So that one big one that I put underneath my title is for the word magnificence. And so it's just like one of those dictionary definition sheets. And then underneath it, I put the word stillness. And this is where I'm bringing in a little bit more of that mustard color. I'm going to add this one up to the top that says, can we stay forever? And then I have, for today's agenda, is that little like vellum tag that I put up there. And that one's a Heidi swap. And then I added another little phrase up at the top that just says, enjoy the now. So this is where I decide I've used a little bit of this mustard color. I feel like it needs to kind of have a presence throughout the layout. So this is a really easy way to add a little tiny pop of color. So all I did is I took my Tim Holtz Distress crayons, added in little scribbles of that color, and then smeared it with my fingertips. That's it, you guys. And it gives it this really cool look, almost like the light beams from the photo came through to the background. So the lights in the photo have that goldish look and then the turquoise. And so this like was one of those kind of happy accidents. So because I pulled in a few mustard embellishments, it allowed me to kind of go in that direction, and I love what it added to the background. So when you're using this stencil, think about trying something like that to add just a little extra pop of color, and I think you will really like what you come up with. All right, guys, have a great day. Make something super fun. Bye, everybody.